Okay, hello everybody to our course in macroeconomics. And on the first slide, you see that I will give a so-called normal lecture just here in the room, and that I parallelly stream this via Zoom to the internet, and afterwards I will upload this at my YouTube channel. And so you can choose what you want in order to follow this lecture. Yeah, my name is Bernhard Köster. For you who don't know me, I'm a professor here in economics general, and I give all the general economics lectures, and most students here in our faculty have to see me because one of the very general lectures is macroeconomics. Okay, then firstly let's talk about how is it organized. As I said, I will also, if the technique is working, in parallel this lecture via Zoom, and it will be uploaded at my YouTube channel. Here you can find links, and also in general the content of my lecture. Is it opening? Yep. Will be in general organized via my oops, was it no, I can via my homepage, and here you find lectures, and then you find here macroeconomics, and all the content will be uploaded here. So the starting slides you will find here, and in this part then I will upload also the edited slides and the links to the videos. All organizational stuff, you will find it at the Moodle course of this lecture. Yeah, and if you want to reach me, maybe the easiest way is to write me an email, or my office is just in opposite here, and if you see me there, my door, if I'm in, will be mostly open. Then just step in. Otherwise, we make some appointment, and this can also be done digitally if you want. Okay, then another important thing, hopefully on Monday morning, we will have some presentations for a new professorship at our faculty in general economics and especially international economics. So this will be a guy who will in the future especially give lectures in IBS. So okay, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, but anyhow, it's very important to get a feedback about the guys also from the students. And this will also feed into the rating who the university will choose afterwards. So it would be very nice if you come to these two presentations. The first one, 8:15, here in this room. This is in global economics, further lecture I give also in IBS, and the other one is 10:15 at the in the fourth floor. So it would be very nice if somebody of you will participate and have a look at these maybe new guys will give lectures, especially in your studies. Okay, this we already had, and yeah, oops, what's now happening here? So sorry. So have you seen this? No. So this I don't know. There was another program on this. So the first one will be at where's my mouse in this room at 8:15, and the other one at 10:15 in the first floor on next Monday. Okay? Yes. Afterwards, the lecture goes on. Yeah. It's about 50 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe 40. It depends. Okay. Then this was more or less the organizational stuff. Any questions to the organization of the lecture? Because then we can go to the content, and I will start at first with the literature. Well, in general, it's a very broad field about macroeconomics, and yeah, if you look, then you will find more or less in every economic studies a lecture like macroeconomics throughout all over the world, and maybe the first three books I would recommend are the standard right now, the standard macroeconomic books throughout the whole world. Olivier Blanchard, he was one time the main economist of the International Monetary Fund. Mankiw was an advisor of the American, of the US government, and they wrote, yeah, very standard books about macroeconomics. And of course, you can have a look in these books. Barrow Gordon is also a very famous economist. His book is called The Modern Approach of Macroeconomics. Yeah, but it's quite the same as the others. I don't see many difference between them. Then I would recommend Mr. Krugman, Economics in General. If you have a look at the New York Times, he has a very famous blog about, yeah, almost every economic topics, which are actually very interesting. So if you are interested, just go to the Krugman blog at the New York Times. There you will find really a discussion about many, many topics in economics in general. Boda and Wiplosch, they, of course, have a focus on European numbers in general in macroeconomics, and the two others you see here already, advanced macroeconomics. These are a little bit more theoretical books. So if somebody is interested more in the mathematics behind all the models we will talk about, then you can also have a look in these books. Also, I chose, yeah, so-called different persons because we are here in economics, not in a natural science. So there is no real truth what is right or wrong. or how the economy is functioning. So we have very different views, and from this view, we recommend very different things what we should do if, yeah, somehow the economy is not really working, and if you have especially a look right now to Germany, then we are really puzzled. What should we do? Because we are in a kind of a slight recession, and then we have, yeah, very hard restrictions from our budget because, of course, in Germany especially and in Europe in general, we have, yeah, to rise our resources we have to give into the military, and this will be very expensive in the future. And these euros we cannot spend, for example, for education. And Um, yeah, what we then should do in these situations, there I will give you mainly two views, and one of them is the so-called Keynesian view. John Maynard Keynes was a very famous economist in the beginning of the last century because he interpreted the economy a little bit different compared to the views the 200 years before. And this other view is therefore then called the neoclassical view. And maybe one can summarize these views that in the Keynesian view you say, well, you have really to be careful about frictions. So in your first lectures, well, you maybe have seen these diagrams, prices and quantity, and then you said, okay, there we have a supply curve. The higher the price, the more I want to sell. And we have the falling demand curve. The lower the price, the more I want to buy. And these two, supply and demand, come together. And then we have the intersection because we have the change in price. And then we have here our equilibrium at the market. But this then, of course, means that especially the price has to be very flexible. And this assumption, we can doubt because, yeah, if you look at the macroeconomic perspective, and especially if you look, for example, to the labor market, and the price in the labor market is the wage. And then if you look also again in the now to the situation in Germany and Lower Saxony in our Bundesland here, then we have yeah, the problem with our very large automobile factory, Volkswagen. And there's now the question, what happens to the wages there in the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months? And there I think you can also see that these wages do not change instantly. They will not change tomorrow because, yeah, the employees will in the next months or in the next years not really say that they are that they want to earn less. And so, especially in this very important market, we can say, well, the assumptions about very flexible prices we can really doubt. And so to speak, the Keynesian view just say the frictions are very important, especially maybe the prices are not that flexible, and the neoclassical view makes in extreme the assumption that prices are highly or fully flexible and we move more or less instantaneously into this equilibrium. And well, so to speak, we could say that Blanchard or Krugman, that these two guys, yeah, more or less are Keynesian economists, while Mankiw or Gordon, you would say they are more neoclassical economists. And this you will then also see if you read their books. Well, they talk, everybody talks about in general about economics, and in the books everything is argued very well, but then you also see some difference in their views. Well, and in my lecture, I will show you both views in general when we are going to the theoretical part. And yeah, although there are many very good textbooks, and if you go to other universities, you more or less will find the slides of the macroeconomics Blanchard book or the slides of the Mankiw economics textbook. I give still my own lecture. And of course, something will be similar as you find it in these textbooks, but in general, I think this is my task to give you yeah, my own lecture and also my own views, and that in the end, that you have the possibility to make your own view on the economy. Because again, in economics, we want to describe ourselves, how we are acting in the economy as persons, and this then, of course, means yeah, well, we can act in the neoclassical way, or we also can say maybe here nobody says that I have to sell more if the price is higher. This is maybe rational, but I can also act in another way. And therefore, there is actually no right answer on questions. So, and this then means also that all what matters for the exam in the end are my slides, my exercises, and then you can redo all the stuffs in the video. And in the end of the lecture, I will give you also some review questions where you can go through and recapitulate the whole lecture. Yeah, then my lecture will be divided mainly into two parts. One's first starting part is a more descriptive part where I will show you also, yeah, some data, some development, how was the economy evolving, and I will especially have a look on Germany, how was GDP, economic growth, unemployment, inflation developing in the last years. And after this more descriptive part, then we will slightly change to a theoretical part. Especially we will have a look at monetary policy, and then also I will give you yeah, I will show you different models how to describe the whole economy working within a macroeconomic perspective. And there we will start with the Keynesian view, and then I will relax the assumptions so that in the end we will end in the neoclassical model. That you then also can see, well, all the argumentation within the neoclassical view and the Keynesian view is always logical. but they make very different assumptions how the economy is working. And yeah, since I will give you in the beginning an overview, how large is the gross domestic product? What is inflation? Then we also have to know where do we get the data. And this I will also recommend for you. I don't know if you have already written some term papers or something else, or in the end you will write your thesis. And yeah, how where do I get information about the economy or about my topic? And there is, of course, you have different sources, and I divided it in the general institutions. So all the statistical offices, the German Statistical Office, the European Statistical Office, all the central banks. There you find many data, Bundesbank, European Central Bank, American Central Bank, Bank of England, and then we have also international institutions, the OECD, the International Monetary Fund, World Bank especially, and I really recommend that you would have a look at these institutions and that you practice to find data in all the data banks throughout the world. Because unfortunately, every data bank is working differently. And then, especially in Germany, we have the very nice situations that we have many economic scientific institutes. And yeah, if you have then your topic for your bachelor thesis or a term paper, then you can just have a look at these economic scientific institutes, and I think you will find for every topic a study or some information about where you can really rely on that this is well prepared research you find there. So the CESIFO, maybe you know it from the quite famous general economic indicator, which we find in the news every month. Is it going up or is it going down? So how is the economy evolving? DIW, General German Institute of the Economy, IFW, Institute for the World Economy here in Kiel. And down here, I also gave you some international institutes. Bruegel is a European scientific institute, NICER in UK, ESRI in Ireland, NBER is a very broad scientific institute in the United States, as also the Peterson Institute and Brookings institutions. And I hope that all the links are here working. Let's try one. Yeah, so I think all this is working, or let's go to this one here where you can find oops, some topics, publications. Again, wow, why is always this program starting? I don't know. It says E for economic studies. We can find some. Oops. Or working papers. Um, So here you find many papers and studies. So please have a look at this. Okay, and then it's that it was. And if you have no further questions, I, we could start now with the lecture and the content in general. Okay. Yeah. So one very general introduction. We could ask, what is economics? And yeah, very first funny statement or two, maybe funny statements. Economics is what economists do. This is kind of a tautology. So we explain it through ourselves, more or less. And then there is also one statement from a famous German writer. National economics is if people wonder why they do not have any money, there are many reasons. The most meaningful reasons are the scientific ones. And yeah, of course, because it's what this means, it is quite hard to define it. And there is, of course, no general definition what is economics in general. And then I looked just in the internet, and there you find many um, definitions. Here again from Krugman, which we have already seen in the literature. Economics is the study of economies at both the level of individuals and society as a whole. So the level of individuals, this could be then more or less the microeconomics lecture. I think most of you have already participated on the individual level when you have utility maximization and profit maximization of one firm, of one individual, and the society as a whole. This would then mean we have to aggregate everything, and this will be more or less then what we will do. Or economics is the study of how human beings, this is what I already have talked about. We want to describe our own acting as a whole, coordinate their wants and desires. So what does it mean? This is more or less our demand curve. Given the decision-making mechanisms, social customs, and political realities of the society, so we are always also working in a very general framework. I think we could be quite happy here in the center of Europe that we are more or less have free markets and we still live in democracies. And within this framework, our economy is working. If you have a look to Russia or to China, then there, of course, you have a very different framework, and then also the economy is working in another way. So also we have to look at the framework, the general framework, and well, of course, will mainly, or we will in general talk about the economy within a free market circumstances. Or in general, economics, Mankiw, you have already also seen in the literature, is the study of how society manage scarce resources. And this hopefully you have already heard in your first lectures in your studies. This is just the main economic problem. We have scarce resources and how to divide it due to our preferences. Or here I gave you also some links where you can also find more definitions. This is a very nice essay um, where you really find many things. Well, they have always some in common, but also you see that they do not say always the same. So then, how do we want to analyze our economy? And this is maybe how also I organized my lecture, that at first we have to describe our economy. Just look at the data and make a good description of your problem. And this is then more or less a diagnosis of our economic events. And then we have an idea how to explain it. So we are doing some model building because we want to explain why do we find specific data. And this will be then our theoretical design. And what we then, of course, have to do, how good is our model? Does our model really fit the data we find? And this is then the evaluation. And if we find more or less a good model, what we then want to do, of course, is doing some forecasts. How, under these given circumstances, is our economy evolving in the future? Well, and this is what I do now for more or less 15 years. When I left university, then I started to work in the scientific staff of the German Council of Economic Advisors. This was a very, very interesting time because I just started in the beginning of 2008. And maybe you have heard of it. Right now, it is already a historical event. But in 2008, the um, financial and economic crisis started. And yeah, what we then there did also is what should we do in such a large crisis? And when we looked at the data 15 years ago, then we really said, well, this is one of the largest crises we have ever, economic crisis we have ever seen. This was directly compared to the world economic crisis in the 1930s. And then we thought, okay, we went through it around 2011, 2012. But then also the European budget crisis started. Not that hard as the economic crisis in 2008, but still again a crisis. And then came Corona, and then came the Russian war against Ukraine. So right now, throughout the last 15 years, we have more or less every 3, 4, or 5 years a very hard crisis. So it is, yeah, very important that we think about what can we do within these crisis situations. And for this, we have to have a good model in order also to forecast what will happen in the future. And from this forecasting, then, yeah, we recommend for the government what you maybe have to do within these situations. And this then also, yeah, splits more or less what we are doing because as an economist, we can then work once as a scientist where we more or less neutrally describe and explain how the economy is working. And if we then recommend to the government what we are do, what we should do, then we are working as an advisor. And this we really have to split because In the one part, we really neutrally only want to explain the world, and afterwards, maybe some persons say, let's try to change the world. But this is, of course, then dependent on my own conviction. And as I already mentioned, there are very different views how the economy is working. And if you look then into the news or looking the discussions in TV, then you see there maybe very often in this situation we have to spend more. We have to spend more. We have to construct via the government, or we have to invest in our infrastructure because this increases demand, and then something is some more goods are sold, and then the profits will rise and everything will be good. In short, this is one argumentation which is logical. But on the other way, you can say, well, if I just start giving money from the government into the market, what will happen? Well, the entrepreneurs just rise prices because there's new money, and we rise prices because we can now sell our goods for higher prices and nothing else changes. We have only inflation. This is also a logical interpretation of the economy. And for this, yeah, one has to be careful if somebody is sitting in these discussions and just say, this is the way how the economy is working. And I do not, I do not care about other views. Okay, and this then is split that we say if we are working, so to speak, as a scientist, then these are so-called positive issues. Positive issues are descriptive, and we only want to explain the functioning of the world. And very important, this is then totally neutral. I don't say this is good or bad. I just say this is my best explanation how the economy is working. And then we have the normative issues, and then we are judging this functioning. And this, in the former slide, depends then on my own conviction. And this then means I'm not neutral anymore. And there you have always to be very careful if you read some statements of other persons, I think. Because hopefully after this lecture you can make your own view and then you judge for your own what you think is the best explanation. And in order to explain this, maybe we can talk about some statements, and hopefully you can help me and can say me or explain, is it a normative or is it a positive example? In almost all European countries, also in the United States, there is by law a minimum wage. So you are not allowed as an entrepreneur to hire some person for less. In Germany, it's roughly 12 euros per hour. And then the argumentation economically, a minimum wage causes unemployment for low-skilled worker. Is there a judgment, so normative, or is it just neutral and so then a positive statement. What would you think? So the internet can also participate. You can write down it in the chat. We will see. So what do you think? Minimum wage causes unemployment for low-skilled workers. Anybody? Well, again, we could look at this general diagram on the of the labor market. And then we would here wage, W, and L for labor. Then in general, of course, we would assume that the higher our wage, the more we are working. So supply. And the higher the wage, the less the entrepreneurs will hire people. Demand for labor. And if the market is functioning, then we would have here our general equilibrium. And if we now introduce a minimum wage, what could then happen? Yep. Yeah, but within these, within the statement here, what happens in this market with relation to this statement here? Let's say this would be 8 euros per hour and we would have a wage of minimum wage of 12 euros per hour. Yep. Yep. The equilibrium must be up. Well, you would have here the minimum wage of 12 euros. For 12 euros, we want to work that much, or that many people want to work, if we look to it from a macroeconomic perspective. But there are not as much companies who really want to pay these 12 euros. So what we then find is that this would be the number of the people who are working. But that much people want to work, or compared to a free market with free floating prices, then we have here a difference. This, or not X, but L star. This would be the number of people who would work without the minimum wage. So this would be then the unemployment. Okay, and in general, we would say, well, that low-skilled workers, that they would in general earn less money or have very low wages. And if we then start to raise the minimum wage, then we should not be very surprised that the unemployment will increase. Okay? So then, neutral or normative? Well, it's just only an explanation. There is no good or bad. I just say when, in general, our general model of the Homo economicus, I hope you have heard about this modeling, our own acting as persons. And from this Homo economicus perspective, we could deduce this increasing supply and falling demand curve, and then we say, well, there's no judging about is it good or is it bad. It's just the way like it is. And if it is in this way, then we should not be surprised that when we introduce a minimum wage, that then the unemployment rate, especially for low-skilled workers, is increasing. So then this would be normative. Well, of course, still some also of these low-skilled workers will be still in work. And they will earn now more money. And if we have now a look at the second statement, the higher income of some people due to the introduction of a minimum wage outweigh the higher unemployment of other people. Normative or positive? Here we have the unemployment and we have some people who earn more. Yep. Oh, sorry. This was, yeah. I said positive. And the second one? Is there a judgment within it? Yeah. Huh? So I say, well, there are some people who are now better off and some people are worse off. And then I say, and then I judge it and I say, well, the group who is better off, aggregated, that this will outweigh the group of the people who are now worse off. So here we have a judgment between these better, worse off groups. And therefore, this is normative. So then this actually happened just in the beginning of the Ukraine war. Increasing oil prices increase the demand for electromobility. What economic view is behind this, and is there a judgment within it? First, we could ask, is it a logical argumentation that this will happen? Because why? What is the economic interpretation behind this statement? Yep. Pardon? Louder? Yes, this is a cross price elasticity. So our demand for electromobility is not only dependent on the own prices of electromobility. There we need energy and we have to buy the car. But we also think I could also buy a car with a standard motor driving with gasoline. And then behind this is more or less with the car I want to drive from A to B, from Wilhelmshaven to Oldenburg. So in this case, then I could assume that a gasoline-driven car and an electro car are more or less perfect substitutes. And if the price of the substitute, the gasoline car, is going up, then the demand for my car, which I can substitute the gasoline car, is increasing. So this is then, of course, just the economic explanation, again, just due to our assumptions how we are economically acting. And then positive. Due to the interpretation via cross price elasticities. Gasoline car and electro car are substitutes, and then if the price for driving a gasoline car is going up, then demand for electro car is going up. I don't say that is good or bad. This is just the way it most probably will happen. Coal-fired power stations have to incorporate the cost of CO2 emissions causing climate change. Positive or normative? Again, you have to ask yourself, is there a judgment or not? Well, that it happens if we are burning dead animals, then we know what happens. This morning it was raining very heavily. So I know there are some people who say there is no human being made climate change, but well, if we look at the data, we could say you can, of course, say this, but it is not the way reality is working. And now we say here, if we are causing for producing energy, climate change, then we have to pay for it. Is it normative or positive? Yeah, positive. Why? Yeah, try to explain why positive. But is it neutral? Well, there is something happening, and then I know you have to. But maybe in Germany, still the most people would say yes, let's care about climate change. But if you have a look, the United States, half of the people there just say, well, it doesn't bother me. So, yeah, yeah, yeah. Mhm. Yeah. So this is a judgment. You have to do something against climate change. And this would then mean normative. So 3 minutes are left. So normative, positive, normative, positive. Increasing the military budget to 2% of GDP in Europe reduces due to higher interest payments the national budget. No, we don't have the money for this, so we have to ask ourselves, um, did the government get the credit to finance all these things? And therefore tightens the possibilities for future generations. Positive or normative? Yep. Yeah. There will be in future less money for you. Positive. Just a statement. Since we have not enough money today. Yeah, and this, if you look at discussions in the future, quite often people just say that their normative statements are the right things and that it is like the world is working. And yeah, in future, maybe you can try to distinguish between these normative and positive statements. Okay, then that it was for today, and hopefully I see somebody of you on Monday. That would be very nice because, of course, you can choose more or less the people you will see in the future in these lecture rooms, and otherwise, we see then on Tuesday. Thank you very much.